$3. That's what her life was worth now. Clara Whitmore pressed her youngest daughter against her chest and watched the crowd laugh. 5 children clung to her threadbare skirt in that freezing saloon, and not a single man would meet her eyes. Damaged goods, someone muttered. Too many mouths. She'd sold everything, her wedding ring, her mother's Bible, her dignity, and still nobody wanted her. Then the door opened, and a stranger walked in from the snow. Stay with me until the end of this story and comment which city you're watching from so I can see how far this tale has traveled. The saloon in Bitter Creek smelled like tobacco whiskey and desperation. Clara stood on a wooden platform that creaked under her weight, holding 3-year-old Lily so tight the child whimpered. "Mama," Sarah whispered from behind her. At 14, her eldest daughter understood exactly what was happening. "Mama, they're all leaving." Clara didn't answer. She watched another man shake his head and push through the crowd toward the door. That made 7. 7 men who'd taken one look at her and her 5 children and decided they'd rather face a Wyoming winter alone. "Now, gentlemen," the auctioneer called out, his voice losing enthusiasm with every word. "Mrs. Clara Whitmore here is an educated woman. Can read, write to figures. She's got experience running a household and running it into the ground from the looks of her," someone shouted. Laughter rippled through the room. Clara felt her face burn, but she kept her chin up. She'd promised herself that much. Whatever happened today, her children would not see her break. "She's got 5 young'uns," another voice called. "Who's gonna feed all them mouths I can barely feed myself?" "Ain't no charity here, Silas. We came for wives, not whole orphanages." More laughter, louder this time. Emma, her 11-year-old, tugged at Clara's hand. "Mama, why are they being so mean?" "Hush now," Clara murmured. "Stand tall, baby. We Whitmores stand tall." But God, it was hard. 2 years of standing tall. 2 years since Robert walked into that blizzard and never came back. 2 years of watching her children grow thinner, watching their clothes fall apart, watching hope drain from their eyes like water from a cracked cup. The mail-order bride program had been her last option. She'd spent her final coins on train tickets west, believing foolishly, desperately believing that someone would want her. "Let's move on," a man near the front said loudly. "There's other women waiting. Good women. Women without baggage." Clara flinched. Baggage. Her children were baggage now. Thomas, her 9-year-old son, stepped forward. Suddenly his small fists clenched. "My mama ain't baggage. She's the best mama in the whole world, and you're all just—" "Thomas!" Clara caught his shoulder. "Enough." "But Mama—" "I said enough." The boy's eyes filled with tears, but he stepped back, his jaw tight with fury. He was too young to fully understand. The auctioneer, a round man named Horace Bickford, mopped his forehead with a stained handkerchief. "Well now, surely someone's interested. Mrs. Whitmore's healthy, hard-working—" "She's skin and bones, Horace. Look at her." Clara was skin and bones. She'd given her portions to her children for months now. The dress she wore hung on her frame like a sack on a scarecrow. "How about $50? Horace tried. "That's a bargain, gentlemen. A steal." Silence. 40? Nothing. Come now, 25. Anyone. The quiet stretched on, broken only by Lily's soft crying and the wind howling against the windows. Snow was piling up outside. Clara could see it through the grimy glass, white and thick and deadly. If no one bid on her today, she and her children would be turned out into that snow. The program had rules. Unclaimed women were sent back east, but Clara didn't have money for tickets. She didn't have money for anything. "Mama," Will whispered, her 6-year-old pressing against her leg. He'd been sick for weeks, his cough getting worse every night. "Mama, I'm scared." "I know, baby, I know." "Mama, are we gonna die?" Clara's heart cracked. Just a little more, just another piece breaking off. "No," she said firmly. "No, We are not going to die. Whitmores don't die. We survive. But even as she said it, she wondered if it was a lie. The door at the back of the saloon opened. Cold air rushed in carrying snowflakes that melted the moment they touched the warm air inside. Every head turned to see who'd entered. He was tall. That was the first thing Clara noticed. Tall and broad-shouldered, wearing a coat that had seen better days and boots caked with mud and snow. His hat was pulled low, shadowing his face, and when he stepped inside and closed the door behind him, he moved with the careful economy of a man who'd learned not to waste energy. "Well, well," Horace said, brightening. "Mr. Tucker didn't expect to see you here today." The man Tucker didn't respond immediately. He was scanning the room, taking in the crowd, the platform, the remaining women waiting along the wall. Then his gaze found Clara. She felt it like a physical touch. Those eyes, gray, she thought, or maybe blue, traveled over her face, her thin frame, her children clustered around her like frightened chicks. "What's the situation here?" His voice was quiet, but it carried. Ah, Horace's enthusiasm dimmed. "This is Mrs. Whitmore, Mr. Tucker, widow from Philadelphia, 5 children. We've been, having some difficulty finding her a match." "I can see that." Someone snickered. "She's all yours if you want her, Tucker. Ain't nobody else gonna bid on that mess." Tucker turned slowly to look at the man who'd spoken. Just looked at him. Didn't say a word. The man's smile faded. He suddenly found his drink very interesting. Tucker turned back to the platform. To Clara. "Ma'am?" Clara nodded stiffly. "Sir." "These your children?" "They are." "All 5 of them?" "Every single one." He studied her for a long moment. Clara felt herself being weighed, measured, assessed, but not the way the other men had done it. They'd looked at her and seen problems, mouths to feed, work to manage. This man looked at her like he was trying to see something underneath. "What happened to your husband?" he asked. "He died." Clara's voice was flat. 2 years ago." "How? Does it matter?" "Might." Clara hesitated. She'd told this story so many times it had become just words, empty of the pain that used to live in them. He walked into a blizzard. They found his body 3 days later. Tucker's expression didn't change. "On purpose?" The question hit her like a slap. No one ever asked that. No one ever acknowledged the possibility that Robert hadn't gotten lost, that he'd made a choice. "I don't know," Clara said quietly. It was the truth. After 2 years, it was still the truth. Tucker nodded slowly. Then he looked at her children one by one. Sarah trying to look brave. Emma curious despite her fear. Thomas still angry. Will coughing into his sleeve. Lily face buried in Clara's neck. "Your boy there," Tucker said. "He's sick?" "Just a cough." "Sounds like more than a cough." Clara's arms tightened around Lily. "He needs warmth and good food and rest. Things I can't give him right now." "Can't or won't?" Her temper flared. "Can't, sir. If I could. Don't you think I would? Do you think I enjoy watching my children suffer? Do you think I wanted to end up here being passed over like spoiled meat while men mock my family?" The room had gone silent. Tucker's lips twitched. Almost a smile. "You got fire, ma'am. That's good." "Fire doesn't feed children, Mr. Tucker." "No. But it keeps them alive long enough to find food." He turned to Horace. "What's the current bid?" Horace blinked. Well, there isn't one strictly speaking." "Then I'll start one." Tucker reached into his coat and pulled out a worn leather pouch. He opened it, looked inside, and his jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. $3. Someone burst out laughing. $3? Hell, Tucker, that's less than the cost of a lame mule. It's all I got. The laughter died. Men exchanged uncomfortable glances. Josiah Tucker wasn't a man people laughed at twice. $3. Tucker repeated, looking at Horace. For the woman and her children. All of them. Mr. Tucker. Horace leaned forward, lowering his voice. Perhaps you should reconsider. 5 children is a considerable. Did I stutter? No, sir. Then write up the papers. Clara's heart was pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. $3. Her value had been assessed at $3. Less than a horse. Less than a good pair of boots. But it was $3 more than anyone else had offered. Wait. Her voice came out stronger than she expected. I want to know why. Tucker looked at her. Ma'am. Why would you do this? You don't know me. You don't know my children. $3 might be nothing to these men, but I can see it's not nothing to you. She nodded toward his worn coat, his patched boots. So why? The room held its breath. Tucker was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, When I came in here, I saw a room full of men who couldn't see past their own convenience. I saw a woman standing alone, holding her ground, refusing to break, even when everyone wanted her to. He paused. I know what that feels like. Clara stared at him. You asked why, Tucker continued. Here's your answer. I got a ranch 15 miles outside town. It's failing. I got debts I can't pay, and a winter coming that might kill what's left of my cattle. I got nothing to offer you but hard work and cold nights and probably a lot of disappointment. Then why? Because you're still standing. His eyes met hers. After everything, losing your husband, raising 5 kids alone, ending up in this godforsaken saloon with men treating you like garbage, you're still standing. That means something to me. He reached into his pouch and pulled out 3 silver dollars. They clinked against each other in his palm. This is everything I have, ma'am. Everything. I'm offering it to you because I reckon we might be able to help each other. Not because you're desperate, hell, we're both desperate, but because desperate people sometimes see things clearly that comfortable people miss. Clara's throat was tight. Her eyes were burning. And if I say no, then I'll walk out that door and you'll never see me again. His voice was calm. I won't force you into anything, Mrs. Whitmore. I ain't that kind of man. Mama. Sarah's voice was barely a whisper. Mama will needs a doctor. Clara looked at her son. Will's face was flushed with fever, his breath rattling in his chest. He needed warmth, medicine, food. She looked at her daughters. Sarah trying so hard to be strong. Emma still believing things could get better. Lily too young to understand anything except that Mama was scared. She looked at Thomas, her boy, who was so angry at a world that had stolen his father and was threatening to steal everything else. Then she looked at Josiah Tucker, a stranger with gray eyes and $3 and nothing to offer but honesty. What's your ranch like? She asked. Small, log cabin, 2 rooms, barn standing but needs work. Got about 40 head of cattle, though. I'll lose some this winter for sure. Is it warm? Got a fireplace. Burns hot when there's wood enough. Is there food? Not much. Enough to get through a few weeks if we're careful. Books? Tucker blinked, clearly surprised. Ma'am? I asked if you have books. My children need to learn. I won't let them grow up ignorant no matter what else happens. For the first time, something like respect flickered in Tucker's eyes. Got a Bible, nothing else. Then we'll start with that. She took a deep breath. $3, Mr. Tucker, for me and my 5 children. Those are your terms. Those are my terms. And you understand what you're taking on. 5 mouths to feed 5 lives depending on you. A woman who doesn't know the first thing about ranching? I understand. You might regret it. Might, but I reckon I'd regret walking out of here more. Clara looked at her children. At their thin faces, their hopeful eyes, their trust, that terrible, precious trust, that somehow she would make things right. Then she looked at Josiah Tucker. All right, she said. Yes. The word fell into the silence like a stone into still water. Tucker nodded once. He walked forward and placed the $3 on Horace's table. The coins rang against the wood, a small sound, but it echoed through the room like a bell. "Get the papers," Tucker said, "and someone find me a blanket for that boy." Nobody moved. Tucker turned and looked at the crowd. Just looked. His hand didn't move toward his gun, but suddenly, everyone was very aware that he was wearing one. "I said someone find me a blanket." A man near the back scrambled to comply. As Horace rushed to prepare the marriage documents, Tucker climbed onto the platform. Up close, Clara could see the lines around his eyes, the gray threading through his dark hair, the calluses on his hands. A man who'd worked hard for everything he had, and probably lost most of it anyway. "Your boy," he said quietly, crouching down to Will's level. "What's his name?" "William. We call him Will." "Will." Tucker's voice was gentle now, so different from the hard tone he'd used with the crowd. "Son, can you hear me?" Will nodded weakly. "I'm going to pick you up now." "Okay. Wrap you in a blanket and carry you out to my wagon. It'll be cold outside, but we'll get you warm soon. You trust me." Will looked at Clara. "It's all right, baby," Clara said. "You can trust him." Will looked back at Tucker. "You gonna take care of my mama?" "That's the plan." "Promise?" Tucker was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "I promise I'll try. That's the honest answer. I can't promise everything will be easy, but I can promise I'll try harder than I've tried at anything in my life." Will considered this with the gravity only a sick child could muster. Then he held out his arms. Tucker lifted him carefully, cradling the boy against his chest. Someone thrust a blanket at him, and he wrapped Will up tight. "Mrs. Whitmore." Tucker looked at Clara. "Can your other children walk to the wagon?" "We can walk," Sarah said firmly. "We've walked farther than 15 miles before. Not in snow like this, you haven't." "We can do it," Emma piped up. "We're Whitmores. Whitmores can do anything." Something almost soft crossed Tucker's face. "That's so? Mama says so." "Well then," he looked at Clara. "Sounds like your mama's a smart woman." "She's the smartest person in the whole world," Lily announced from Clara's arms. "She knows everything." "Everything, huh?" "Everything." Tucker's lips quirked. "Then I reckon I made a good investment." Horace was waving them over papers ready. Clara signed her name in neat, careful script. Clara Margaret Whitmore, then watched Tucker add his own signature, rougher but legible. Josiah Samuel Tucker. "This is highly unusual," Horace muttered as he stamped the documents. "Most irregular. 5 children, $3. I've never seen the like." "Write it down in your records," Tucker said. "Might make for an interesting story someday." He handed the papers to Clara. She folded them carefully and tucked them into her dress next to her heart. "Mrs. Tucker," Tucker said. Clara startled. She'd forgotten. She had a new name now. "That's me," she said. "I suppose." Ready to go home. Home. Such a simple word. Such an enormous promise. Clara looked around the saloon one last time. At the men who hadn't wanted her. At the women still waiting along the wall, some watching with envy, others with pity. At Horace already moving on to the next auction. Then she looked at her children. At Thomas, still wary but curious now. At Sarah, shouldering the family's one carpet bag. At Emma, bouncing on her toes with anxious energy. At Lily, thumb in mouth, watching everything with wide eyes. At Will, wrapped in a stranger's arms, already half asleep against Tucker's shoulder. "Yes," Clara said. "We're ready." The cold hit them the moment they stepped outside. Clara gasped. She'd forgotten how brutal Wyoming winters could be. The wind cut through her thin dress like knives. "Here." Tucker was shrugging off his coat, one-handed, still holding Will. "Put this on." "Mr. Tucker, I couldn't." "You can and you will. I'm used to cold. You ain't. Put it on." Clara hesitated, then took the coat. It was still warm from his body, heavy with the smell of horses and wood smoke. She wrapped it around herself and immediately felt better. "Thank you." "Don't thank me yet. The wagon ain't much warmer." The wagon was in fact barely warmer than standing in the open air, but Tucker had laid down hay in the bed, and he settled the children in together, covering them with another blanket he produced from somewhere. "Sarah, you're oldest. Keep your brothers and sisters warm. Don't let that blanket slip." "Yes, sir." "The ride's about 2 hours in this snow. It'll be dark by the time we get home. There's jerky in that tin there if anyone gets hungry." "Yes, sir." Tucker paused. "You don't have to call me sir." Sarah raised her chin. "What should I call you then?" For a moment, Tucker looked uncertain. It was the first crack Clara had seen in his composure. "Tucker's fine," he said finally. "Or Joe. That's what folks called me growing up." "Mr. Joe," Sarah said, testing it out. "Close enough." He turned to Clara. "Ma'am, you can ride up front with me or in the back with your children. Your choice." Clara looked at the front seat exposed, cold nothing between her and the wind but Tucker's borrowed coat. Then she looked at her children huddled together under the blanket. "Up front," she said. "I want to see where we're going." Something flickered in Tucker's eyes. Respect, maybe, or recognition. "Yes, ma'am." He helped her up onto the seat, then climbed up himself and took the reins. An old horse waited patiently in the traces, a mare with a coat gone gray around the muzzle. "This is Bess," Tucker said. "She's slow, but she's steady. Won't spook even in a blizzard." "She looks kind." "She is." Tucker clicked his tongue and Bess started forward. "Kindest soul I know, truth be told." They rode in silence for a while. The snow fell steadily, muffling everything, turning the world white and quiet. Clara could hear her children murmuring to each other in the wagon bed, could hear Will's rattling breath, could hear her own heart beating. "Mr. Tucker," she said finally. "Joe?" "Joe." The name felt strange on her tongue. "What you said back there, about being desperate yourself." "What about it? How bad is it really?" He was quiet for a long moment. The reins sat easy in his hands, and Bess plodded on through the snow. "Bad," he said finally. "Got a loan coming due in 3 months. Don't have the money to pay it. Man named Blackwood's been trying to buy my land for 2 years. He'll get it when the bank forecloses." "How much do you owe?" $800. Might as well be 8,000. Clara absorbed this. $800. An impossible sum. "And you spent your last $3 on me." "I did." "Why, really why? Not the pretty speech you gave in there. The real reason." Tucker was quiet for so long, Clara thought he wasn't going to answer. "My folks died when I was 16, he said finally. "Bandits. My brothers and I split up the ranch and I got the worst piece, the land nobody else wanted. I was supposed to fail." He shifted the reins to one hand. "I didn't fail. Built something from nothing. Then I lost most of it, drought bad winter's woman who said she loved me running off with someone richer." His jaw tightened. "Everyone's been waiting for me to give up. Sell out to Blackwood. Admit I was beat. But you haven't." "No, I haven't." He looked at her. "When I walked into that saloon today, I wasn't planning on bidding on anyone. Came to get supplies, heard about the auction, figured I'd watch. Nothing more." "What changed?" "You did." Clara frowned. "I don't understand." "You were standing up there with 5 children getting mocked by every man in the room, and you didn't cry. Didn't beg. Didn't make yourself small to try to seem less threatening." His voice was rough. "You just stood there and took it, and your eyes were saying, 'I dare you to break me.'" Clara's throat tightened. "I know that look," Tucker continued. "I've worn it myself more times than I can count, and I thought maybe 2 people who refused to break might have a chance together. Maybe." "That's a lot of maybes." "It is. We might make things worse for each other. I don't know anything about ranching. My children are hungry, and one of them is sick. She stopped. I'm not the woman you probably wanted. I didn't want any woman. Not for a long time. After Martha left, I figured I was done with that part of life. Then why? Because you're not Martha. His voice was simple. Martha looked at this land and saw everything it wasn't. You haven't even seen it yet, and you already asked about books for your children. That tells me something. What does it tell you? That you're thinking about building, not escaping. That you're planning for a future, not just surviving the present. He glanced at her. That's the kind of person who might be able to make this work. Clara pulled his coat tighter around herself. The cold was seeping through, but she barely felt it. I should tell you something, she said. Go ahead. My husband, Robert, he didn't just walk into that blizzard, he walked into it on purpose. Tucker didn't react, just kept his eyes on the road. He'd lost everything, Clara continued. Made bad investments, borrowed from the wrong people. By the time I found out, there was nothing left. He couldn't face it. Couldn't face me. So he walked into the snow and never came back. And left you to deal with the mess. Yes. That make you angry. Every single day. The words came out harder than she intended. Every single day, I'm angry. At him for being weak. At myself for not seeing it sooner. At the world for making this the only option I had left. She took a breath. I'm not a good person, Mr. Tucker. I'm angry and I'm bitter and I'm so tired I can barely think straight. If you're expecting gratitude, I'm not expecting anything. Good. Because I don't have anything to give except work. Hard work. I'll do whatever needs doing to keep my children alive and safe, but I can't promise to be pleasant about it. To her surprise, Tucker laughed. It was a short sound, rusty from disuse, but genuine. Ma'am Clara, I don't need pleasant. Pleasant doesn't survive winters out here. I need someone who won't quit, and you just told me you're angry enough to fight the whole world. He shook his head. That's not a weakness. That's fuel. Clara stared at him. In all her life, no one had ever said her anger was useful. Her mother had called it unladylike. Robert had called it exhausting. The world had called it inappropriate. You're a strange man, Joe Tucker. Been told that before. It wasn't an insult. Didn't take it as one. They rode on in silence. The snow kept falling. Somewhere behind them, Clara's children had fallen asleep, their breathing soft and steady under the blanket. For the first time in 2 years, Clara felt something other than despair. She wasn't sure what to call it yet. Not hope. Hope felt too fragile, too likely to shatter. But something. A spark. A possibility. $3 and a stranger's faith. It wasn't much, but it was more than she'd had this morning. And Clara Whitmore. Clara Tucker now was used to building something from nothing. The cabin appeared through the snow like a ghost. Small. Dark. Hunched against the hillside as if trying to disappear. Clara felt her heart sink, but she kept her face still. She'd promised herself she wouldn't show disappointment. Whatever this place was, it was shelter. It was warmth. It was more than her children had now. It ain't much, Joe said quietly, as if reading her thoughts. I know. It has walls. It does. And a roof. Most of one. Clara almost laughed. Almost. Most of one will do. Joe pulled Bess to a stop and climbed down. His boots crunched in the snow as he came around to help Clara, then moved to the wagon bed where the children were stirring. Sarah. Emma. We're here. Sarah sat up, blinking. Her eyes found the cabin, and Clara watched her daughter's face go through the same journey hers had. Hope, disappointment, acceptance. It's small, Emma said, not bothering to hide her reaction. Emma, Clara's voice was sharp. But it's got a chimney, Emma added quickly. That means fire, right? I like fire. Joe lifted Will from the wagon. The boy was burning up now, his breathing worse than before. Let's get inside. I'll start the fire. The interior was exactly what Clara had expected. One main room with a stone fireplace, a rough table, 2 chairs. A bedroom door stood open, revealing a simple bed with a patchwork quilt. Everything was clean, but worn, maintained, with the kind of desperate care that spoke of a man holding on by his fingernails. "Bedroom's yours," Joe said, settling Will onto a chair near the cold fireplace. "You and the children. I'll sleep out here." "Mr. Tucker." "Joe. Joe, this is your home. We can't take your bed." "You can, and you will." He was already kneeling at the fireplace, building a fire with practiced hands. "5 children need proper sleep. I've slept on worse than a wooden floor." Clara wanted to argue, but Will coughed a terrible rattling sound that made her chest ache. She moved to her son instead, pressing her hand to his forehead. "He's burning up." "I know." Joe didn't look up from the fire. "Got some willow bark tea that might help." "Not much, but it's something." "We need a doctor." "Nearest doctor's in town. 15 miles. In this snow, that's a day's ride each way." "Then we go tomorrow." "If the storm lets up." Joe got the fire going and stood brushing off his hands. "Right now, we keep him warm, get fluids in him, and pray." Clara's jaw tightened. She'd been praying for 2 years. Praying hadn't brought Robert back. Praying hadn't fed her children. Praying hadn't stopped her from ending up on an auction block, but she nodded anyway. What else could she do? The first night was chaos. 5 children, 1 small cabin, not enough beds, not enough blankets, not enough of anything. Clara organized them as best she could. Sarah and Emma sharing the bed with Lily Thomas on a pallet on the floor. Will closest to the fire where she could watch him. She didn't sleep. She sat in one of the rough chairs watching the flames, listening to her children's breathing, waiting for Will's cough to turn into something worse. Sometime past midnight, Joe appeared at her side with a cup of tea. "You should rest." "Can't. Your boy's gonna need you strong tomorrow." "My boy needs me watching him tonight." Clara took the tea but didn't drink. "You should rest too. You've got a ranch to run." "Ranch can wait." "Can it?" She looked at him. In the firelight, his face was all shadows and hard angles. "You said you had debts, cattle to tend, work that needs doing. Nothing that won't keep till morning." "That's not true, and we both know it." Joe was quiet for a moment. Then he sat down in the other chair, stretching his legs toward the fire. "You always this stubborn. Always. My mother called it my worst quality." "Sounds like a wise woman." "She died when I was 12. Consumption." "I'm sorry." Clara shrugged. "It was a long time ago." They sat in silence. The fire crackled. Will coughed in his sleep, but didn't wake. "Tell me about the debts," Clara said finally. "Now." "I can't sleep anyway. Might as well know what we're dealing with." Joe rubbed his face with one hand. He looked exhausted, Clara realized. More exhausted than she'd noticed before. $800, he said. "Owed to the bank in town. Loan came due 6 months ago, but they gave me an extension. Extension runs out in 3 months. What happens then? If I can't pay, they foreclose. Blackwood buys the land at auction for pennies on the dollar. He's been waiting for it, circling like a vulture." "Who's Blackwood?" "Cornelius Blackwood. Owns most of the land in this valley. Wants to own all of it." Joe's voice hardened. "My property's got the only creek that doesn't dry up in summer. He needs it for his cattle operation." "So he's the villain." "He's the man with money and power and no conscience about using either." Clara absorbed this. $800. 3 months. A powerful enemy waiting for them to fail. "What are our assets?" Joe blinked. "Our what?" "Assets." What do we have? Cattle equipment, anything we can sell or leverage. I got about 40 head of cattle, old Bess and 2 other horses. The cabin, the barn, the land itself 60 acres. He paused. That's it. No savings. Spent my last $3 today. Clara set down her tea and stood. Where do you keep your records? My what? Financial records, ledgers, receipts, loan documents. Joe stared at her like she'd started speaking another language. I got a notebook where I write things down sometimes. Stack of papers in a drawer, that's about it. Show me. Now. I told you, I can't sleep. He showed her. The notebook was barely half filled, the handwriting cramped and uncertain. The stack of papers was exactly that. A stack, no organization, no system, receipts, mixed with bills, mixed with letters from the bank. Clara spread everything out on the kitchen table and began sorting. Joe watched her work with something like wonder on his face. You know what you're doing. I kept my father's books from the time I was 12. After my mother died, someone had to. Her hands moved efficiently, creating piles, income here, expenses there, debts in a third stack. Robert never let me touch our finances. Said it wasn't a woman's concern. How'd that work out? He lost everything and walked into a blizzard. Clara's voice was flat. So not well. By the time gray light started seeping through the windows, Clara had a clear picture of Joe Tucker's financial situation. It was worse than he'd told her, but also better in some ways he hadn't seen. You've been paying twice for some things, she said when he brought her coffee. These receipts here, you paid the feed store in September and again in October for the same order. I did. You did. And these charges from the blacksmith don't match your records. Either someone's been cheating you, or your math is wrong. Probably both. Joe looked embarrassed. Never was much good with numbers. I am. Clara tapped the papers into a neat stack. Here's what I know. You owe $800. You have about 40 cattle worth maybe $20 each if you can get a fair price. That's $800 right there. Can't sell all my cattle. Got nothing to rebuild with. I know. But it tells us the assets exist. The problem isn't that you have nothing, it's that the system is designed to keep you from using what you have. She looked at him. Blackwood controls the stockyard in town, doesn't he? How'd you know that? Because if you could sell your cattle at fair market value, you wouldn't be in this position. Someone's controlling the price. Joe's expression shifted from confusion to anger. That son of a bitch. Language. Sorry. He didn't sound sorry. But you're right. Every time I try to sell, the price is lower than it should be. I thought it was just bad timing. It's not bad timing, it's strategy. He's squeezing you out. Joe sat down heavily. So, what do we do? We find another buyer, someone outside Blackwood's control. There isn't anyone else for 100 miles. Then we go 100 miles? Clara's jaw was set. You said you weren't going to give up. Neither am I. We have 3 months to find $800. That's a lot of time if we use it right. Joe looked at her, really looked at her, and something changed in his face. Something softened. You're not what I expected, he said quietly. What did you expect? I don't know. Someone grateful, I guess. Someone who'd be happy just to have a roof and not ask questions. Do you want me to be that person? No. He shook his head. No, I reckon I don't. Will's fever broke on the 3rd day. Clara had barely slept, barely eaten, spending every moment at her son's side, cooling his forehead with wet cloths, forcing willow bark tea between his lips, praying despite herself. When his eyes finally opened, clear, focused, present, she burst into tears. Mama? Will's voice was weak but there. Mama, why are you crying? Because you scared me, baby. You scared me so bad. I'm sorry. Don't be sorry. Just get better. Promise me you'll get better. I promise. Joe appeared in the doorway. He'd been handling everything else while Clara focused on Will, feeding the other children, keeping the fire going, checking on the cattle, doing the work of two people without complaint. He's awake. He's awake. Clara wiped her face with her sleeve. His fever's down. Thank God. Thank you. Clara looked at him. You didn't have to do all this. The children, the house. We're partners now, ain't we? That's what partners do. Partners. The word settled into Clara's chest like something warm. Mr. Joe. Will's voice was thin. Are you our new pa? Joe went still. Clara held her breath. I don't know, son, Joe said finally. That's not for me to decide. That's for your mama and for you kids. My other pa went away and didn't come back. I know. Are you gonna go away too? Joe crossed the room and knelt beside Will's pallet. Up close, Clara could see the emotion he was trying to hide, the careful way he held himself, the gentleness he didn't want to admit to. Well, I can't promise you everything's gonna be easy. Winter's hard. Life out here's harder. But I can promise you this, I ain't gonna walk away. Whatever happens, I'm gonna be here fighting. For this ranch. For your mama. For you and your brothers and sisters. Even if it gets really bad. Especially then. Will considered this with the gravity of a 6-year-old who'd already learned that adults sometimes lied. Okay, he said finally. I believe you. Good. Joe stood. Now get some rest. Your mama's been worried sick about you, and she needs sleep almost as bad as you do. I don't need... Clara started. Yes, you do. Joe's voice was firm. I'll watch him. You sleep. I can't. Clara. It was the first time he'd used her name without prompting. She looked up surprised. Your children need you strong, Joe said. Will's gonna be fine. The crisis is over. But there's more coming. There's always more coming. And you won't survive it if you run yourself into the ground. He was right. She knew he was right. But letting go, trusting someone else to watch over her child, that was hard. Harder than anything she'd done in 2 years. 2 hours, she said finally. Wake me in 2 hours. I will. She didn't believe him, but she was too tired to argue. She stumbled to the bedroom where her daughters were already asleep and collapsed onto the bed without even removing her shoes. She slept for 6 hours. Joe didn't wake her. When she emerged furious and rested despite herself, she found her children gathered around the table while Joe showed them how to play cards. You said 2 hours. I lied. He didn't look up from his hand. Thomas, your turn. You lied. Yep. And I'd do it again. You needed sleep more than I needed your help. Clara wanted to be angry. She really did. But Emma was laughing at something Thomas said, and Sarah was smiling for the first time since Philadelphia, and even Will, still weak, still pale, was watching the game with interest. Her children looked almost happy. Fine, Clara said. But we're talking about boundaries later. Yes, ma'am. The first trip to town came a week later. They needed supplies, medicine for Will, flour, salt, things Joe's bare pantry couldn't provide. Clara insisted on coming despite Joe's reservations. People in town won't be kind, he warned her as they hitched Bess to the wagon. They've heard about the auction by now, about me spending $3 on a woman with 5 kids. Let them talk. It ain't just talk. Blackwood's got friends. Most of the businesses in town depend on him one way or another. Then we'll find the ones that don't. The ride to town took most of the morning. Clara left the children at the ranch, Sarah in charge, strict instructions to keep Will warm and everyone fed. It felt strange leaving them. She'd barely let them out of her sight since Robert died. But Joe was right. She couldn't protect them from everything. She had to trust them to survive a few hours without her. Bitter Creek was a small town, not much more than a main street, with a handful of buildings clinging to it like barnacles. General store, blacksmith, saloon, bank, church. A few houses scattered around the edges. Everything looked gray and cold under the winter sky. People stared as Joe helped Clara down from the wagon. She felt their eyes on her, curious, contemptuous pitying. The mail-order bride who'd sold for less than a horse. The desperate woman with 5 children hanging off her skirts. Let them look, she thought. Let them see. The general store was warm inside, smelling of coffee and tobacco and dried goods. A woman behind the counter, middle-aged, sharp-eyed mouth, set in a permanent frown, looked up as they entered. "Mr. Tucker? Mrs. Miller. Heard you got yourself a wife." The woman's gaze swept over Clara, assessing and dismissing in one motion. "And 5 new mouths to feed. News travels fast. Not much else to do in winter." Mrs. Miller's attention returned to Clara. "You're her, then? The one from the auction?" "I am." Clara kept her voice steady. "Clara Tucker. Pleased to meet you." Mrs. Miller didn't return the pleasantry. "Got a list." Joe handed over the paper Clara had prepared. Mrs. Miller scanned it, her frown deepening with each item. Willow bark flour, salt coffee, cornmeal beans, bacon. She looked up. "This is a lot of credit, Tucker." "I'll pay when I can, always have." "That was before you took on a family of 6. Mrs. Miller set the list down. "I'm sorry, but I can't extend more credit. Not with your situation being what it is." Clara's stomach dropped. "Our situation?" "Everyone knows about the loan, about Blackwood circling." Mrs. Miller's voice wasn't unkind exactly, just practical. "If Tucker loses that ranch, he can't pay his debts. I got a business to run. We're not going to lose the ranch." "That's not how I hear it." "Then you're hearing wrong." Clara stepped forward. "We have a plan. We have assets. We have 3 months to turn things around." "Mrs. Tucker." Now there was pity in Mrs. Miller's eyes. "I've seen a dozen ranchers come through here with plans and assets and timelines. They're all gone now. Blackwood saw to that. We're not them." That's what they all said. The door opened behind them. Cold air rushed in, and with it a man Clara had never seen before. But from the way Joe's whole body went rigid, she knew exactly who it was. "Well, well." The voice was smooth-cultured wrong for this rough town. "Josiah Tucker, I heard you'd finally taken a wife." Clara turned. Cornelius Blackwood was not what she'd expected. Where Joe was rough-hewn and weathered, Blackwood was polished, expensive coat, clean boots, gray hair, carefully combed. He looked like a Boston businessman, not a Wyoming rancher. "Blackwood." Joe's voice was flat. "And this must be the famous Mrs. Tucker." Blackwood's smile didn't reach his eyes. "The woman who sold for $3. I must say I was impressed. That takes a certain kind of desperation." Clara felt her temper flare, but kept it leashed. "Mr. Blackwood." "Mrs. Tucker." He tipped his hat with exaggerated courtesy. "I hope you're enjoying your new home, such as it is. It has walls and a roof, that's enough. For now, perhaps." Blackwood's gaze slid to Joe. "But winters are hard out here, and spring comes with its own challenges. Loan payments, for instance." "My finances ain't your concern." "Everything in this valley is my concern, Tucker. You know that." Blackwood's smile widened. "But I didn't come here to make trouble. Quite the opposite, in fact." He reached into his coat and produced an envelope. "I've prepared a new offer for your property, $700, cash. That's more than fair given the current condition of the ranch. The land alone is worth twice that. The land is worth what someone's willing to pay for it, and I'm the only one willing to pay anything at all." Blackwood held out the envelope. "Take it, Tucker. Pay off your debts. Give your new wife a fresh start somewhere else. It's the smart move." Clara watched Joe's face. Watched the struggle there, the temptation, the exhaustion, the desperation. $700. It would clear their debts with money left over. They could go somewhere else. Start again, maybe find a place where Blackwood's shadow didn't reach. Then Joe's jaw hardened. "No. I'm sorry." I said no. Joe pushed the envelope back toward Blackwood. That land's mine. I built it from nothing. I ain't selling it to you for any price. Pride's an expensive luxury, Tucker, especially for a man who just spent his last $3 on... Careful. Joe's voice went dangerous. Real careful about what you say next. Blackwood's eyes flickered. For just a moment, something ugly showed through the polished surface. I'm trying to help you. No, you're trying to rob me. There's a difference. Is there? Blackwood tucked the envelope back into his coat. I suppose we'll see. The bank won't be as patient as I am. And when they foreclose, not if, when I'll buy your land at auction for half what I'm offering now. He turned to Clara. Mrs. Tucker, I hope you know what you've gotten yourself into. This man is going to lose everything. And when he does, you and those 5 children will be out in the cold again. Think about that. Clara met his eyes. I've been out in the cold before, Mr. Blackwood. I survived it. I'll survive whatever comes next, too. We'll see. He left. The door closed behind him, and the tension in the room slowly released. Mrs. Miller let out a breath. That man's going to make your lives miserable. He already has. Joe's hands were shaking slightly. Anger or fear, Clara couldn't tell. But we ain't backing down. I hope you know what you're doing. Mrs. Miller hesitated, then reached under the counter. Look, I can't extend credit, but I can give you what you came for at cost. No markup. It's not much, but... That's enough. Clara's voice was soft. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. Blackwood finds out I helped you, he'll make trouble for me too. Then we won't tell him. Mrs. Miller filled their order silently, her movements quick and efficient. When she handed over the wrapped packages, her eyes met Clara's. You meant what you said about having a plan. I meant every word. Then I hope you're as smart as you think you are, because that man doesn't lose. Ever. The ride home was quiet. Joe stared straight ahead, hands tight on the reins, jaw clenched. Clara let the silence stretch, sensing he needed time to process. He's going to come at us again, she said finally. I know. Harder next time. I know. We need allies. People willing to stand against him. There ain't many. He's got his hooks in most of the town. Then we find the ones he doesn't have. Clara thought about Mrs. Miller, her reluctant kindness, her quiet defiance. She helped us. There might be others. Maybe. Joe didn't sound convinced. There's always someone who's been hurt by men like Blackwood. Someone waiting for a chance to fight back. We just have to find them. Joe was quiet for a long time. Then he said, You really believe we can do this? I believe we can try. Clara pulled his coat tighter around herself. She'd been wearing it since that first day, and he hadn't asked for it back. And I believe trying is better than giving up. Even if we lose. Especially then. She looked at him. My husband gave up. He looked at an impossible situation and decided death was easier than fighting. I won't do that. I won't teach my children that quitting is an option. Even when it's the smart thing to do. Smart isn't everything. Clara's voice was fierce. Sometimes stubborn beats smart. Sometimes refusing to die is more important than knowing when to quit. Joe was silent. Then slowly, he smiled. It transformed his face, made him look younger, almost hopeful. You know what I think you might be the best $3 I ever spent. Damn right I am. He laughed, a real laugh this time, surprised out of him. Where'd a proper Boston lady learn to talk like that? 2 years of raising 5 children alone with no money and no help. You learn all kinds of things. I reckon you do. They rode on through the snow. Behind them, the town disappeared into white. Ahead, the ranch waited, small and struggling and full of problems they couldn't solve. But for the first time, Clara felt like they might actually have a chance. Not because the odds were good. Because they were too stubborn to care about odds. That night, after the children were asleep, Clara sat at the table with Joe's accounts spread before her. He sat across from her watching her work with a cup of coffee cooling in his hands. What are you looking for? Leverage. Clara traced a line of numbers with her finger. Blackwood's been squeezing you for 2 years. That means he's been cheating you for 2 years. Charging too much for supplies, paying too little for cattle, manipulating prices. So there's a pattern, and patterns can be proved. She looked up. If we can show the bank that your losses weren't just bad luck, that you were deliberately sabotaged, they might give us more time. The bank's in Blackwood's pocket. The local manager might be. But what about the territorial office? Banks have regulations, oversight. If we can get documentation to someone outside his control, that's a big if. Everything's a big if right now. Clara set down her pen. But we have 3 months, and I refuse to spend them just waiting to lose. Joe studied her. You're really something, you know that. I'm desperate. Desperate people think differently. No. He shook his head. It's more than that. You see things, angles, possibilities, things I'd never think of in 100 years. That's because you're a rancher. You see land and cattle and weather. I see numbers and systems and how people cheat. Clara almost smiled. We make a good team. Yeah. Joe's voice was soft. I reckon we do. Their eyes met across the table. Something shifted in the air, a warmth that had nothing to do with the fire, a tension that wasn't unpleasant. I should sleep, Clara said, looking away first. You should. She gathered the papers, stood, hesitated. Joe, yeah. Thank you. For today. For standing up to Blackwood, for not backing down. I know it would have been easier to take his offer. Easier ain't always better. No. Clara smiled. It isn't. She went to bed thinking about stubborn men and desperate women, and the strange alchemy that happened when 2 people decided to fight together instead of alone. $3 and a shared enemy. It wasn't much to build a future on. But it was something. The blizzard came without warning. Clara woke to a sound she'd never heard before, a howling so deep it seemed to come from the earth itself. The cabin shook. The windows rattled. And when she pushed open the bedroom door, she found Joe already at the front window, his face grim. How bad? Bad. He didn't turn around. Worst I've seen in 5 years. We're going to be stuck here for days. The cattle? Pray they found shelter. Clara moved to stand beside him. Through the frost-covered glass, she could see nothing but white. White sky, white ground, white air thick with snow that fell sideways, driven by a wind that sounded like screaming. What do we do? We survive. Joe finally looked at her. His eyes were worried in a way she hadn't seen before. Got enough wood for maybe 4 days if we're careful. Food for a week if we stretch it. And if the storm lasts longer, then we got problems. Behind them the children were stirring. Sarah appeared first, then Emma, then Thomas, rubbing sleep from his eyes. Will and Lily came last, the little girl dragging her blanket behind her. Mama? Will's voice was still weak from his illness. What's that noise? Just a storm, baby. We're safe inside. It sounds angry. Storms can't be angry. They're just wind and snow. This one sounds angry, Will insisted. Clara couldn't argue. He was right. The first day passed slowly. Clara kept the children occupied with lessons, reading for the older ones, letters for Lily, arithmetic for Thomas, who complained constantly but did the work anyway. Joe spent hours at the window, watching the storm, checking the fire rationing wood with the careful precision of a man who'd done this before. You're worried about the cattle, Clara said during a quiet moment while the children ate their meager lunch. Worried about everything. Joe rubbed his face with both hands. If we lose too many head to this storm, we're finished. Don't matter what plans we make. How many can we afford to lose? 5. Maybe 10 if we're lucky with the spring calves. He shook his head. But a storm like this trapped out in the open, we could lose half the herd. Then we do what we can and pray for the rest. You pray much? Clara considered the question. I used to, before Robert. Now I mostly just talk to myself and hope someone's listening. That's honest. Honest's all I got left. The second day, the storm showed no sign of letting up. The children grew restless. Thomas and Emma fought over nothing. Will had a coughing fit that scared everyone. Lily cried because she was bored and hungry and didn't understand why they couldn't go outside. I want to play in the snow. Not this snow, baby. This snow is dangerous. Snow can't be dangerous. It's soft. This snow can kill you. Clara's voice was sharper than she intended, and Lily's eyes filled with tears. Hey now. Joe crouched down to Lily's level. Your mama's right, but she didn't mean to scare you. Tell you what, when this storm passes, I'll build you the biggest snowman you ever saw. Deal. Lily sniffled. How big? Big is this cabin? That's really big. It'll be a really big snowman. Lily considered this. Okay, but you promise? I promise. She threw her arms around his neck. Clara watched Joe's face, the surprise, the hesitation, then something softer as his arms came up to hold the little girl. Thank you, Clara mouthed over Lily's head. Joe just nodded. That night, after the children were finally asleep, all five crowded into the bedroom for warmth. Clara and Joe sat by the fire. The wind still howled outside, but they'd grown used to it. Background noise now constant and relentless. Can I ask you something? Clara said. Go ahead. Earlier with Lily, you were good with her, natural. That a question? Do you have children? From before, I mean, you never said. Joe was quiet for a long moment. The firelight cast shadows across his face, hiding his expression. No, he said finally. Martha, my fiancée, she didn't want children. Said they'd tie her down. When she left, I figured that was that. You wanted them, though. Wanted a lot of things I didn't get. Clara pulled her knees up to her chest. I didn't want children. Not at first. Robert did. Said a man needed heirs, needed a legacy. She laughed, but there was no humor in it. 5 children later, he walked into a blizzard and left me to raise them alone. That ain't fair. No, it isn't. She looked at Joe. But I love them, every single one. They're difficult and loud, and they eat more than I can provide, and I love them more than I've ever loved anything in my life. I can see that. Can you? The way you look at them. The way you put yourself between them and anything dangerous. Joe's voice was soft. That's not obligation. That's love. Clara felt tears prick her eyes. She blinked them away. What do you see when you look at them? What do you mean? My children. When you look at them, what do you see? 5 mouths to feed. Problems you didn't ask for, baggage. Joe was quiet for so long. Clara thought he wasn't going to answer. Then he said, I see Sarah trying to be the adult so you don't have to carry everything alone. I see Emma pretending nothing scares her because she thinks that's what brave means. I see Thomas angry at a world that took his father and gave him nothing but struggle. He paused. I see Will fighting to get stronger because he knows you're worried about him. And Lily just wants someone to build her a snowman. That's all. Just a snowman. Clara's tears fell then. She couldn't stop them. They're not baggage, Joe continued.